Hi, I'm Gina-R-Farrar, Reinvention Coach, creator and host of Feminine Roadmap podcast, and leader of this amazing global community of women. If you are approaching midlife or are already in the thick of it, welcome home. Please grab a cup of something wonderful and join me for some real talk, practical strategies, and a big dose of sisterhood. I am so glad you're here. Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. It is Gina here, and I'm so excited to be back with a wonderful guest today. We have a great topic. It's actually a very needed topic in the culture and the environment that we're currently living in. My guest today is Jerica-jech. She's going to be talking about being suddenly single and midlife dating. She is a dating and love coach, and she reached out to me on Instagram, and I thought, yes, we need to know what in the world it looks like and how to navigate the newest kind of complexities of dating, not just as a woman in midlife, but in the world in general right now. So, Jerica, thank you so much for coming on my show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this, and I know that it can be difficult, but I really want to bring that light fun to it, that spicy flair and the ease and the fun, hopefully, to the whole topic and dating itself.
You know, I think we were talking just before we hit record about silver divorce, and we also heard it was called gray divorce. And we were just talking about how depressing gray and divorce together were. Like, it was so dull and sad, and, you know, it's like one of those post-apocalyptic movies, you know, just horrible. And so I thought, you know, there is a reality right now where we are having an uptick in divorces after 25 years of marriage. They actually gave it a name, silver divorce, gray divorce. And I know you found yourself suddenly single at 48. So why don't you give us a little bit of your backstory so people know who you are and where you're coming from?
Well, I was married for 15 years. So I was married maybe a little bit later, I guess at 32 or whatever it was, 33. And yeah, married for 15 years. And I mean, of course, you look back and hindsight is 2020, and okay, it wasn't totally a surprise, but it was not something that I wanted. And definitely because my parents were divorced when I grew up, I had very much was holding on to this idea that I was not going to repeat that. It was really like my life dream / goal, however you want to put that, to be in one relationship, in one marriage, you know, for my entire life. And that was really my goal. So yeah, suddenly single, like that was not part of the plan at all. So to be single then at 48, I mean, it was a shock.
Now, how long did you decide to kind of remain single before you turned the corner and thought, okay, I'm going to be brave and put myself back out there? And what was that emotional and mental journey like for you?
Well, that's an interesting question because it's very, very different and individual, but that is a question that a lot of, I think men and women, but definitely women are asking is like, how long should you wait? And a lot of people, and this is kind of just something in divorce with generally, is people will, you know, offer lots of advice about what you should do and what you shouldn't do. And they'll usually tell you that you should wait X amount of time. I actually didn't wait at all. And I think that and we'll even talk about this with a lot of things in dating, it's really, and especially in midlife, but it's really about going into yourself and asking, what do I want? You know, a lot of us, just a feature of being in midlife in general, not with divorce, but we've kind of been taking care of other people and we've been working our butts off and all of that. And we've lost a little bit of sight of what we want. So for me, I knew immediately that I did not want to stay single. As I mentioned, I got married a little bit later at 32. So I had been single through chunks sometimes in my 20s. And so, you know, I could do that. I knew I could because I had been like for 3-4 years at a time, completely not even dating, like I've said, in my 20s. But when I got married, I was like, I know this isn't going to be easy, but I know what it's like to be single. And I don't choose that lifestyle. I choose to be with someone and to have a companion. So when I was faced with divorce, that part remained kind of as just who I am, I guess, and kind of what I believe. I believe we're on this journey, on this planet to learn from that most intimate relationship. And I want to have that companion, and no, it's not always easy, but it is a learning experience, and it also just feels good. It's fun, all of those things. So I knew I didn't want to be single. And interestingly, my mom, so I was 48, she must have been 78 or so. But she's quite the spicy old hippie woman from the 60s and 70s. And she's actually the one that really encouraged me, because I said, oh, I should wait until it's totally legal. Nobody's going to want to date me. I'm not even actually divorced yet. And, of course, I was in a bad place with self-esteem, as most of us are with divorce. You kind of get crushed. And she just really was like, just try it. Just like put yourself out there. And she just had that kind of light attitude towards it. And I thought, yeah, you know what? What the heck? People might say that there are rules and that you should wait a certain amount of time, but actually there are no rules. And again, that goes back to a message I would use for women in midlife. With, most of these rules, we impose them on ourselves. And it was up to me in that moment to decide, was I ready? Was I not ready? But deciding that you want to date, that doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, I'm ready to get married tomorrow. Like, you don't have to rush to that end goal. Like, I may want to get remarried someday, but I don't need to rush to that. That doesn't mean that I can't go out to coffee with a man. That doesn't mean that I can't go online and look and kind of play around with that whole thing. So yeah, I started right away.
That's awesome. And I think that's a good conversation to have, that, I realize we all have a choice, but sometimes I think when you're new to a situation, it's good to hear from someone else that it's okay, right? Because who knows what the people around us are going to tell us when we end up in that situation, because I'm sure there's a lot of, like you said, advice. Kind of like, I don't know if you have children, but when you're pregnant, it's like the whole world believes that they can tell you the weirdest things. And you're like, I didn't even ask. Like, why are you telling me this? Right. So I feel like this is another version of that, where it's like,
exactly. As you mentioned it, I was going to say, it's very much like when you have a kid and everybody gives you parenting advice and you're like, it's kind of the same thing. But it's you have to know that. And the other thing I would say about that choice and deciding what you want, you can go on a couple dates and then decide to stop. Like, it's fine. It's not a right choice or a wrong choice. You can go on a couple dates and then realize, I'm not ready for this. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's fine. Like, why are we making such a big deal about it? It's just a date.
I think in my mind, as you're talking about that, I know for people that I've known, when they come out of a marriage and they're marriage minded, the thought is to get remarried. Mm-hmm. So I think for some people, there is pressure, because in their mind, mm-hmm. they don't want to mess around. They just want to find that forever partner, that long-term partner. So depending on how you are coming at it, I suppose it could feel like more pressure than not. Now, for yourself, what was your emotional journey? How did you, because you said that divorce crushes you. So what did you do to kind of help lift that heaviness off of yourself so that you could move forward?
So dating was one of the things, but I kind of went at it from, what I tried to do was like, every single thing I could think of, do it all. Just do it all. So it was, quote, radical self-care. If that was, I would do like pedicures, and I would get a massage, and I would go on walks, and I would talk to people. I talked to pretty much anyone who would listen. It became like, I wouldn't say like no filter exactly, but it was just like, if the person in the grocery store, when you go through divorce, there are a lot of other people who've been through it, and they understand the pain of that. And so you can sometimes get little support even from strangers and things. And I also got some negative That also happens too. There's still judgment around divorce. Divorce is still a dirty word. But some people talk about what's called being the open wound. I don't know if any of you really know what I'm talking about, but that's really what it felt like. It felt like I was an open wound, and that was good and bad. So it was very painful, but at the same time, I didn't care if somebody was going to judge me, if somebody was going to say whatever. Like, that stuff just, you're kind of like in so much pain that stuff just doesn't matter. You're just like, whatever. Okay, you're not okay with this? I'll go talk to somebody else. And so I got help from everyone I could talk to. I went on walks, really a lot of really, really long walks. And I would call kind of all the people that were close in my circle, and I would do it often. Like, some of the people that were really close to me, I would call pretty much daily. So I did that. I did all the self-care things, like even going on a trip and like learning how to roller skate again after many years. I got a coach. That's actually kind of what got me into the coaching. So, and that was kind of a combination, like recovering, kind of like healing up that wound, that open wound, and also kind of like learning how to date. That was kind of combined. But my theory was just do everything that you can think of.
I love the idea of doing everything, because that's how I go at life. So I like it. Yeah. But the reason I like it in the context that you're speaking about is because I think we do tend to lose ourselves sometimes in the journey of life. And so we have kind of given ourselves a context, like this is who I am in this context. And when that context is removed, I feel like it's the opportunity to not just relearn yourself, but almost reinvent yourself. What Absolutely. Are the things you've always wanted to do that maybe you didn't take the time to do, or life just took a different track? And it's like a reset, sort of, not that divorce is ever great. In some instances, it's the healthiest thing. In some instances, it's just a very painful consequence of someone's decision, And so who are you in the midst of that? And like you said, if you're an open wound, how do you not become the open wound long term?
And that was me trying, doing all of those different things. One other thing I wanted to say that was super, super important about that time was I allowed myself to have all kinds of different feelings. And that will happen in divorce. And a lot of them, like, they don't even make sense. I felt things I'd really never felt before, like wanting to throw things. I've never like had the urge to actually throw something, and I didn't actually do it, but I had the urge to do it, and it scared me because I was so angry that I wanted to throw something. And I'm just like, who am I? I've never even had this feeling before. So feelings that I'd never had before. And I allowed myself to be angry, to feel crazy, to cry, and to like go out and meet people and stuff. So I would do it at the same time. So for example, when I was, one of the things I did, kind of quote for dating, but kind of it was also just about meeting people. Because again, kind of like that reinventing part that you were just talking about. So I would go on meetup.com, and that's just a great site for meeting all kinds of different people. But there was also like singles groups where you could go and meet like with groups of singles, and I'd go on these hikes. So I'd go on these hikes, I'd talk to women, I'd talk to men, and I would, that would be really interesting. And then I'd come home and like cry for hours and like do jigsaw puzzles and watch Grey's Anatomy. And I just allowed myself to just all of it, meet new people, cry, be angry, be sad, be confused. Just allowing those emotions was a really, really big part. And also having a coach helped with that, but also just talking with people who I knew would accept it, who would accept these feelings, other people who had been through it before. So they knew like, it's actually kind of normal to be that mad and to have that kind of anger.
It's interesting that you talked about, allowing yourselves to feel, because it feels like women should all over themselves as a general habit. Mm-hmm. And we do expect ourselves to, quote, behave a certain way, especially if we're talking like culturally, not necessarily culturally in an ethnic way, but culturally in the area that you live in or the family that you live in. Do you know what I mean? Like whatever kind of culture you live in does shape our expectations of ourselves and the people around us, right? And I think holding a space for that emotional journey, the only way to heal is to just do it. Try to make choices in the process, but let those feelings, honor them. That's the word I'm looking for, honoring those emotions.
And I think that's one of the reasons why it did go a lot faster for me, because, and that term open wound probably describes it a little bit. It felt like I was just letting them just rip through me. And I think because of that, it might have like ripped open a wound really big and scary, but then it was able to heal after that. And what happens, and this has definitely happened for me in other times of my life, sometimes I'll push feelings down and I'll be too afraid to feel them and push them away. When you do that, you don't really allow them to just move out of you and to heal. But in this situation, because of the way I went about it, I was able to heal from divorce so much faster, and not how people say like, oh, that takes years and, you're not ready to date and you're not ready to move on with your life. It's very different from person to person.
As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about how well-meaning people can say things to us, and we have to be careful that they don't stick. Because I was just talking to my daughter this morning about a situation, and I was like, hey, forgive me if I put this fear in your mind. Because of my own fear, I was recognizing that I had looked at a situation outside of us, but I was talking through something with her. But it was filtered through my own emotional experience. And so I was projecting, and so I think when we're hurt or when somebody else has been hurt, we are so easily influenced by our past experiences, right? And we project. So let's talk a little bit about shifting into when you move into the dating scene, how you navigate everyone's projections, everyone's baggage, and then, how did you get into the dating game, and encourage people what it looks like, because we all have, as they say, baggage. And some people carry around a U-Haul and some people have a carry-on, so it just depends. So how do you navigate that part?
Okay. There's so many different ways I could take that. In dating, earlier you were talking about how some people, they've been married and so they just want to get remarried. And that's actually something that I talk about a lot, because whether it's cultural, as you were just saying, but I think we have this unconscious expectation that a relationship is just going to, quote, happen, and that we're going to go from single to in a relationship. And I don't know if you want to blame it on the Disney movies. I've actually really started recognizing it a lot, not in like Disney princess movies. Of course, that's like where we started when we were kids, but even in every normal, just, non-animated movie, if you really look at it, she meets him because he accidentally moves into the house next door, or, it's a friend of a friend or whatever. It's always just like he falls right into her lap accidentally. And so we have this conscious expectation about that. And then again, in movies, we never see an actual dating process. And so what I really try to talk about with the women that I talk to is dating is a process, and it's a very, very important process, especially for those of us who've, quote, been burned before or been hurt before. We can kind of look back with hindsight and usually say, you know what, I did see those red flags and I ignored them. Why did she ignore them? Why did I ignore them? Probably because there weren't other men around, because you accidentally just, quote, fell into that one neighbor that you knew or whatever, and you ended up sticking with him, and you never went through the process of actually with your eyes wide open, looking and evaluating, this is somebody that's going to be the co-captain of your life. I mean, this could not be more important selection process. So again, just kind of to say that again, like an important selection process, if you've ever interviewed anybody for a job or anything, and yet it's the most important selection process, and yet we want to have it accidentally happen and then not evaluate the person at all. It's all going to happen accidentally perfectly.
Wow, that's such a great way to put it, Jerica. I love that. That dating is a very important selection process.
Yeah,
that's
most
so
people
wise.
don't. They don't want to actually be dating. They don't want to date. They just want to be in relationship, be married, and have it done. Well, then ironically, when people are in relationship or married, they look back to the dating part, the early part, as the best part of the relationship. And this is super fun. And when we met, when we fell in love, but we want to skip over it. But it can be fun. It can be wonderful to fall in love and pay attention to possible red flags, to be observing, is this person right to be my co-captain?
So that's to the question, the baggage and the emotional part, we all bring something to the table. So what has your experience been, and how do you help people really be more aware, be willing to not miss the red flags, which it's easy to do when you're young because you haven't lived enough life to know. But now we're in the midlife, we should have a little bit more awareness around that, hopefully. So how do you help people with that?
So hopefully there's, some benefit to being a little bit older and maybe wiser and having some life experience. So earlier you were talking about shoulding on yourself and not to should on ourselves. Again, that's another big topic that I talk about with my clients, because when you should on yourself, which is really judging yourself, I should be a better mom, I should have a cleaner house, I should do this, I should do that. That's judging yourself. The thing is, when you do that to yourself, whether you're aware of it or not, you're doing it to the people around you. And you're probably doing it quite a bit to your partner. And that doesn't feel good. No one likes that. Men definitely don't like it. And they're looking for someone just like we are. We're all looking for someone who will accept us for who we are. And so now we're getting kind of, Gina, into the really, really deep part of the coaching. This is not the surface level stuff, but this is about learning to accept myself as a woman with my baggage. Notice that stuff, like when we talked about feeling my feelings, being willing to feel, quote, ugly, quote, bad emotions, and to see parts of myself that I may not like. But am I willing to be open to that? Can I open myself up to that? If I can accept myself, warts and all, a man, and actually anyone around you, can sense that you would accept them for who they are. Because whatever is kind of inside you is reflecting out to others. So noticing, for example, that you're shoulding on yourself is like kind of like a warning sign, or like a sign, hey, I might want to work on this because I'm probably doing it to other people around me, your kids, your friends, your other family members, everyone. It all comes back to you're working on you.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is, when you feel that emotional turmoil, maybe we're sitting in so much judgment, maybe look in the mirror and see where that's us projecting. Because I think we don't know that we're projecting sometimes. We're just so used to wearing those glasses, if you will.
Right.
You don't realize that you could take those glasses off. It may take some work, but you can.
And the one little kind of little warning or little tidbit I would add in right there is, if you start becoming aware that you are judging and you're like, oh my God, I'm doing that. I'm doing exactly what she's saying. Like, I didn't even think about that, but I'm always thinking, oh, he should do this and she should do that. The first step that I want you to do is not to judge yourself for judging. Because that's usually the first thing that comes up is you're like, oh my gosh, I'm judging everyone. I shouldn't be judging. So slow it down, love yourself, be like, okay, I noticed that I'm judging. That's great. The fact that I noticed, because that's already a step in growth, is just to notice that you're doing it.
There's so much grace in that process, isn't there? So much grace.
Yeah, when you have grace for yourself, you have grace for others. And so it really has to start with us. And I think a lot of us, like we were already talking about before, as women, we've been taking care of other people. So we're always wanting to give grace to them. And it sounds selfish if we're like, well, let me think about me and let me give grace to me. But actually that it starts from the inside and then it spills out. It kind of I would say radiates out. If you have that grace for yourself, and you look at, quote, your own warts, then why would you judge someone else? That you have warts too, and you're aware of those, and you're like, it's okay. I can still love myself, even if I do judge other people.
Mm. Now, once you start this myriad of layers unpeeling about yourself, so what did your dating experience look like, and how can you help a woman who's just overwhelmed? Because the world is not the same as it was when you and I started dating originally. How you meet people, how you communicate with people, with
Yes.
texting in the online. Like, dude, we had to pick up a phone at the house. And if they were going to call you and someone was on the phone, do you remember being all stressed out because the phone call wouldn't come through because
Right.
there was one phone line, just one, no call waiting, So
it's very different. Yeah.
So what is it like right now for you, Jerica, and your clients? What are the kind of challenges and solutions that you're finding?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because we were just getting so deep into our souls. So let's back up a little bit and let's get to more of the surface stuff, which is like, strategies and tactics, and like, what do you do? How do you text? And that was one of the things that brought me to find a coach too. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how to online date, because here I was 48. Well, 15 years before I'm sure online dating existed, but not the way that it does today. And so I was like, the other thing that happens to us in midlife is most of us don't have a really large social life. In my 20s, I was going out, on Thursday night and Friday night and Saturday night, maybe some days throw in a Tuesday, and with different groups of people, maybe just with 5 people or 2 people or whatever. But then everybody that you went out with had their own circle. So there were a lot of potential men kind of in my vicinity. And then as I get older, I'm like, my hobbies are like gardening and walking my dog. Like, how exactly am I going to, I had no men at work that I would meet. So I'm just like, how do I actually even like meet a man, even one man, let alone lots of different men? Like, how is this going to happen? Oh, I know. The movies tell me I'm supposed to wait till somebody moves in next door. So I really started diving into the world of online dating, and I'm really excited. I really love online dating, I want to say, and I kind of consider myself the ninja of online dating. And again, I think it kind of has like a really bad reputation, and people like, I hate it, and online dating sucks, and I can't meet anybody, and the people are terrible. But most of us also know someone who has met the love of their life online. So, we have kind of like both of the sides of it. And so what I try to work with my clients is, you see it as a tool. It's a tool to meet men. Now, if you're already meeting men in your daily life and you're, meeting different single men, and then you probably don't need to do it. But for a lot of us in midlife, we're busy. We're working, we're taking care of our home, we're taking care of our kids. We're busy. And I did do other things like, go to meetup.com, and I would look for other events where single people would be, but online is a great opportunity. The problem is, or the sort of challenge is, how do you use it tactically in a way that works? So there's definitely mindset involved with that. So going in, again, I think subconsciously we have this expectation, like as if online dating is a matchmaker. It's not a matchmaker. Also, remember I was talking about when I go out in my 20s and I had a lot of men kind of, not like they were all rushing around me, but kind of friends of friends or different ones. All of those men were vetted in some way, because I had gone to university with them, or because they were a friend of a friend. They were all kind of already vetted. So they were already fairly high level. When you're talking about online dating, you're talking about anybody. Anyone could be on there. And so your expectation has to be, if you were to go out just in a crowded group of people, like nobody does that right now because of Corona, but if you were to go out in a crowded group of people and see 100 men, random from all walks of life, all different, diversity that the world or your area has to offer, how many out of 100 would you even smile at? How many out of 100 would you want to talk to? How many out of 100 would you want to go on a coffee date with? So you really have to view online dating as it's going to put a whole bunch of men in front of you, but there's only going to be a few that are serious contenders. And that makes sense. We talked earlier that we're looking for our co-captain, and he could be somewhere in that world. But, and you know, what the heck, he might be the first person you click on. But then again, if you're looking for the 1 in a million man and you're expecting to find him in the first 5 swipes or the first even 50 swipes, you've got to have a different mindset going into it. So that's one big starting point.
That's really a good reminder, though, you know, like you said, and this is what I've talked about with other people is you have no idea what this person is like in a social group. You have no idea what they're like with their family. You don't know what they're like with their friends, which is what we naturally, like you said, we naturally vet when we're in physical relationship with someone. We see them in a group. We see them at church. We see them at work. We see them at the grocery store. Like sometimes you see the same people at the grocery store, right? You get a feel for who they are. That's always been my curiosity about online dating is you just don't know. So what are some parameters that you encourage women with? Because that might be intimidating.
So this goes back exactly to what we were talking about with going through the actual dating process and realizing that you're not going to swipe on someone and want to marry them. So your long-term goal might be, you might want to get married, but when you're swiping, you want to just think of, is this somebody I go on a coffee date with? And then you slowly, that dating process is about observing their behavior and consciously, not judging. We talked about judging earlier. Not judging, but just observing. So like in the very first coffee date, it might start off with, obviously, how does he treat you? So does he open the door for you? Does that matter? Does it not matter? Does he pay for you? Does that matter? Does that not matter? How does he treat the staff in the coffee shop? What does he say? Just little things. And they're not necessarily right or wrong, but you just kind of notice, okay, you know, like, for example, you might go on a coffee date and the man might already be sitting down with his coffee. And you might go over there and think, ooh, this is awkward. I thought we were going to order coffee together or something. And he's already ordered. Now what do I do? So you might just kind of note, okay, so he just kind of got his coffee. So to me, that would be like a little tiny concern. So I would kind of note that for future reference. But most of the men that I went out with, they would basically wait for me, and we would kind of either go in together or they would have a table, but they would wait for me. Then we would go order something like that. So you get these little cues from their choices about how they're treating you. And then one of the big things to always pay attention to in dating is, how do I feel when I'm on the date? So back to the feelings again, we talked about the feelings with divorce, but feelings are very, very important. So do you feel, it's normal to feel a little bit anxious, a little bit nervous, but is it more than usual? Did you feel super uncomfortable? Did you feel somehow pressured? Did you feel insecure? Did you feel stupid? Did you feel turned off by something he did? Did you feel turned on by something he did? Did you feel curious about him? So very, very important. What are all those feelings? Those are all our cues that are telling us information about him.
You talked about paying attention to cues, and I keep thinking, because I'm reading a book about neuroscience right now, so I've got like neuroscience on the brain, no pun intended. But so when you're thinking about the neuroscience, it's like our subconscious is taking in millions of bits of information every day of our lives, right? And so it stores all of that, and that becomes what we essentially call our intuition. It's letting us know. So that's so wise to pay attention to your own physical cues, because I've said to my daughters who are adults, it's like, well, what's happening in your body? What is that your body's kind of telling you? You know, if you feel a sense of, if your body's like wanting to put up a wall, not the kind that's unhealthy, but like almost like, it's like one of those intangible things where you can't explain it. He didn't necessarily say anything or do anything, but your body was like, yeah, no, something's not right. That feeling. That's what I'm talking about. So
And
wise.
what I would advise one of my clients to do, if you were my client and you said you felt like that, I usually have my clients journal after every date, and that's a really a way of making this all conscious. And that way you can validate that intuition, and at the same time you can still remain partially open. So let's say that you had just been on a date with somebody and you're like, I don't know, something felt right, didn't feel right, but I'm not sure. I would say, journal about how you felt or anything you noticed, and, go on one more date with them. Because you didn't feel secure about it, I would say things like, don't have him pick you up, or don't, do anything like that. Obviously, all the safety protocols of stuff that we think about as well. But to kind of give it another chance, and then, usually your intuition will say the same thing. But it is important to remain open. And that kind of goes back with that judgments, because we've learned all these kind of judgments of men, judgments of ourselves. And so we have to kind of in a way, train ourselves to be more open. So it's important to kind of have that balance.
I think that is that maturity coming into play, learning to trust ourselves, because when you're in a marriage, you don't necessarily have to have those safeguards in place. You've already gone through all of that, and now you're in a comfortable place. Some marriages that end up in divorce aren't unhappy necessarily, in the sense of they're not horrible. Just one person decides. I mean, maybe they were unhappy, but I've known marriages that seem to be fine, and then all of a sudden it's like, nope, this doesn't work for me anymore. One decides, right? So you've gone from autopilot, right? If you're in a decent marriage, you're safe. You know what to expect. You don't have to think about it. And I think that's, to me, what makes going back out there the challenging part, because you haven't used those skills in however many years you've been married. Like you stored those skills somewhere, but now we have life experience to add to it. So I think that wisdom that you shared is something that I think I'm hearing. This is just my perspective. Biggest thing I'm hearing is trust yourself. Like,
trust yourself
and trust yourself.
Know yourself. And I would kind of add on to that, because I know for me, it was kind of like, well, what am I supposed to know exactly? How do I know myself? Do I know myself? I would just say, ask yourself what you want. And again, for a lot of us in midlife, you might not have an answer for that. But what I would say is continue to ask yourself what you want, and ask yourself for big things, for little things all day. So how do I want my week to look this week? What do I want to do today? What do I want to do for next year? What do I want to eat right now? And allow yourself to just change your mind too. Like, oh, I wanted to eat this. Now I realize I don't want to eat this. So the more you keep just asking yourself this question, like I said, on the little stuff, like what you're going to eat, as well as do I want to go on another date with this man? Do I want to get in the car with him? He's asking me, it's date 3, it's date 4. I really like him, but I also feel a little bit uncomfortable. What do I want? So you have to really, as you said, you can be kind of on autopilot with a lot of parts in your life, and then divorce it makes an upheaval with everything. And so it kind of does push you to figure out, well, what am I doing? And I think a lot of us look, like you had mentioned earlier, we look to other people, and they are, they're ready with their advice. But what we really need to do is be asking ourselves, well, what do I want? Okay, I want this. Okay, no, I don't want this. It's okay to change your mind.
So do you include this curiosity and this freedom in the whole, how to communicate? Because this texting thing, people can read into what you say. And do you use emojis? Do you not use emojis? How do you authentically show up in text?
Okay, texting. Don't get me started. I might start ranting. So I'm a little bit, I don't know, of a rebel or a different voice in texting. So there'll be a lot of videos online and stuff, and what should I text him here, and what should I text him there, and 5 ways to text a man, and et cetera, et cetera. My advice pretty much is don't text. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So I don't mean 100% don't text, but basically text to set up dates. Oh, or, do we want to do this on Thursday? Okay, great. Don't text to try to get to know somebody. Text to set up dates. So and I'll give you a few solid reasons why, in case there's a few of you out there going, oh, but it's really fun. And it does give you the dopamine hits. But let me tell you one of the little secrets about how men fall in love. One of the big reasons, or the kind of ways they fall in love, is with the mystery of the woman. Women are very like mysterious to men, and it's one of the ways they fall in love. I wonder what she's doing. I wonder what she likes. I wonder what she's all about. Like, they're just like fascinated by us, and they think this is amazing. This is part of how they fall in love. So if you think about it, if you're texting a man all day long, oh, I'm about to have a, peanut butter sandwich, and now I'm going to go walk my dog, and now I'm doing this, and oh, good morning, honey. Oh, good night, honey. Where's the mystery? You didn't leave him any space to wonder, oh, I wonder what Jerica's doing today. Gosh, she said, the stuff about, this concert or whatever. I wonder, is she listening to music? Is she going out with friends? Like, letting him have these questions about you, it's part of the mystery. It's part of the thrill. It's part of the spice. And texting can just get you into so much trouble. And I'll just give some negative reasons now why not to do it. You don't know what he's doing when he's texting you. He could be working out. He could be on a walk. He could be with another woman while he's texting you. Like, it doesn't give you any real information. But what it does do is it gives us a false sense that we know the person. Oh, we've been texting back and forth so much. Oh, he told me all about blah, blah, blah. He told me all about this. He told me all about that. So let's go back again to how this dating phase is about observing a man to see if he's going to be your co-captain. So when I'll start asking a woman, what do you know about his character? And sometimes all the things that she tells me, it's like, well, but that wasn't anything that he did. He just told you that he has a great relationship with his kids or whatever, let's say. You never saw any evidence of that. You never saw him do anything. You never heard him talking on the phone to his kids. Nothing. Just the fact that he said this, and I'm not trying to say that anyone, men or women or anyone, is lying on texts. I'm just saying it's like 10% of real. It's just not real. It's just not solid. So my advice to my clients is always, in the beginning, let it be mysterious, let it be thrilling, let it be spicing. Leave the texting for once you're in a committed, established relationship. Then you can start texting. And luckily, since most of the women I work with are in midlife, we don't tend to be as big a texters probably as people in their 30s, people in their 20s. I mean, I think that would be maybe very difficult for them. But I know before I got divorced, my texting was like, hey, pick up some milk. Got it. I was never like having conversations with anybody via text. If it was my mom, I was talking to her on the phone. If it was my son or my partner, it was, hey, get this done. It was no deep conversation.
As you were talking about texting and leaving a little bit of the mystery, I think it also gives the man a bit of chase if we're not having available.
Absolutely. A whole nother topic I could talk a lot about.
Gosh, so this is not as difficult, I think, as it seems in my mind. It's just complex. It's that real sense of looking yourself in the mirror and then acting on your own behalf is kind of what it sounds like.
Yeah. It's all about you. It comes down to you in a lot of ways. So, women will usually come to me because, men are this way or men are that way, or I can't figure out online dating. And a lot of the work actually comes down to, well, what do you want? For example, women will kind of ask like, well, what do men expect and what do men want and what are men looking for? I remember when I first got out there, I was like, oh, I wear glasses now. Is that okay? Like, am I supposed to go on a date with glasses? Like, girls who wear glasses, what is that saying, Or, of course, I'm like 20 pounds heavier than I was before. And it's like, am I supposed to be wearing red? Am I supposed to be having cleavage? Like, what is, quote, expected? And that could be with texting or appearance or anything. But again, we're coming back to this theme of it's about what do you want? You're looking for one man. well, the women that I work with, you're looking for one man. You're looking for that forever relationship. So you're not looking to see what men want in general. It's that one man, and that one man who is your forever man. The best thing that you can do to, quote, attract him is to become the best you that you are.
Yeah. I was thinking that it's kind of like, don't put on the wrong perfume, meaning don't put off the wrong vibes. Don't try to be what the man you're with wants.
Mm-hmm.
There's a confidence to that. It's really about putting on just your authentic self. And I would think maybe you'd have to go through a lot of dates potentially. Like, let's call them interviews. Go through a lot of interviews, and maybe you call the first date an interview and maybe take the pressure of date off. Would that help, do you think? Sometimes words make a difference.
Absolutely. And I think you're right about, basically, I look at dating as like, dating is almost like free therapy. You learn so much about yourself. And if you can see it instead of like, I'm meeting someone for the first time, I might marry him, oh my God, like, you don't really need to be putting that kind of pressure on yourself or him. You might, it's like a little job interview, a little chit chat. Maybe we could call it a little chit chat. Just keep it more light. It's just like, you're just kind of, chit chatting and just to kind of see. And you learn through this dating process. So hopefully our conversation has really convinced a few women to change their view of dating to from ew to, oh, this is a process where I could learn a lot about myself and become a better person for me, for everyone around me, and just maybe I might find my forever love along the way.
One of the things I've told my girls, and I think maybe you come across this with women, because it seems to be a female thing, is that sense of obligation. Like if no thank you in your mind, like you're halfway through going, no thank you. You're not obligated, right, to go out with them again. How do you help women stand in their own power and be able to graciously say, thank you so much, but no thank you?
Oh my gosh, everything you're asking me is so like hitting the nail right on the head. I mean, I remember that from myself. And I think the first thing is for us to become aware of some of these things that are like subconscious. And I think it does have to do with those movies and that stuff that like, I'm supposed to be going out with my neighbor who I already knew for a year, and now I'm falling in love with him, and, like it shows in the movies. So we have to become aware that, I realized, I don't even want to go on a date with someone unless I know I want him to be my boyfriend. And once you realize you're thinking that way, you can look at it and go, wait a minute, that's weird. You realize that what you're thinking isn't right. And then you can kind of like open up to that. And again, it is a lot of confidence, and just be willing to, we're just going on a coffee date.
Yeah, it's not a contract, right? It's not a contract for future things. It's just a one-time.
And men definitely see it that way. They definitely see it much more differently. They see it like they are looking to meet a lot of different women to see who they're interested in. They're not just going to go out with the one woman and think that's it. They're meeting lots of women. And so that hopefully that inspires women also to date more men. And date, again, could be just chit chat. It could be just, what I call coffee dates. You meet and it's 20 minutes. And actually in 2020, a lot of these quote coffee dates happen virtually. So, you could have 4 coffee dates in one night. You could just talk to somebody for 15 minutes on Zoom or whatever it is, and just, maybe go out with them again, maybe not. Mm-hmm. But one of the mindset, really all this stuff comes back to like mindset and personal growth. But one of the mindsets that hopefully I've been able to kind of bring across today is this, like, it's just not a big deal. It's fine. It's, you just went on one date with them. You probably don't have to say anything. In some of the cases, when I would go on a coffee date, nobody would say anything. We just wouldn't contact each other again. And sometimes one of the two of us would say, like, I don't think this is going to work. Or maybe it would be a message after the date. If you're going back to what do I want, you have to keep going back to that. What do I want? You've gone on this date with this man. It's not a match. What do I want? and go back to that. And another little example I'll give is I remember this one particular guy, and I almost kind of knew right when I sat down that it wasn't going to work out. And I'll tell you a little bit why, because it'll show, again, these things that you observe. So I was supposed to meet him at this particular time, and I would always try to get there like 5 minutes after, just so he would already be seated and I would know that, instead of kind of looking around and not being sure. So I came exactly 5 minutes after the meeting time, and I stood in the restaurant, which it was a very large place. It was like a bar and a restaurant. It was very, very big. And I stood there and I looked around and I looked around and I looked around and kept standing there. And I'm like, I don't see him anywhere. And the whole 5 minutes thing is, the reason for that is then he could easily identify me. So I was looking for him to like wave me over, knowing that it was me, you know? And so, but I stood there for quite a while. And so what that kind of told me was, like, he was more involved with his drink, which he already had, an alcoholic drink. He was more, involved with that, or maybe his phone or something else. So he wasn't really like on point waiting for me. So that already showed me a little bit of a flag or whatever. And then we sat down, and, he was just kind of drinking a ton and talking a ton, and I could tell it was just not going to work. So I'm again asking what I want for myself. Well, I don't want to be rude or completely rude as a person. I consider myself to be a nice person. I also didn't really want to stay there. So my solution to that, what worked for me, what I wanted in that moment, I finished my drink, and then I was just like, thank you very much. I'm going to go now. I left. I mean, was it maybe a little bit rude? I mean, maybe a little bit, but I did have the drink, finish the drink, and then I did what I really wanted to do, which was get out of there.
Well, and I think that's probably going to happen. So as we wrap this up, what are kind of 3 really great anchor points that you can give women who are suddenly single and looking at dating in midlife, no matter what their perspective is on it? What are 3 things you really want them to know?
Well, at least 2 of them we've mentioned already quite a bit on this interview. One of them, really the biggest one, keep asking, what do I want? What do I want? What do I want now? What do I want now? Keep asking that. One other tip was we didn't mention the term abundance, but meet different men. Be willing to meet lots of different men and to actually go through dating as a process. So try to really challenge your expectation about, your neighbor moving in and then you getting married to him. Instead, it's so important that you meet lots of men so that you can learn about yourself, and so that you can really observe him and consider him as your co-captain. And let's see, number 3 is kind of related to number 1, and I would bring it back to the feelings. Your feelings are your kind of alerts to what's going on for you, your intuition. It can be really connected to what you want. So you can start like eating that cake, and then you can feel like, I don't really like that. I guess I don't want it. So really staying attention to the feelings.
Mm-hmm. Those are really great points. Now, if somebody wanted to reach out and get a hold of you, Jerica, how would they do that, and what do you have to offer them?
Well, they can just go to my website, which is lovecoachjerica.com. And right there on that first page, there's a red button that'll take you to a free resource that basically, it kind of outlines these first steps in meeting a lot of men, like how to do it, how to do a coffee date, how to swipe on men. How do you kind of go about this process in a really looking at the tactics of all of that, which I think really clears up a lot of question marks and cloudy places if you're suddenly divorced, like I was, suddenly single in midlife, and you're like, what do I do? So this is kind of, and the question with the what do I do is like, how do I meet men? Like, do I have to meet them at the grocery store? So that resource will give you a really strong head start to that, exactly what to do step by step. lovecoachjerica.com.
Thank you so much, Jerica, for being on the show today and for bringing such like authenticity, honesty, and positive challenge, encouraging women to trust themselves and grow. I really appreciate you reaching out to me and being on my show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Gina. And I just loved your questions. Everything you asked me, I'm like, I've got 5 different things I can say about that. You really seem to be able to get right to the message quickly. So,
Well, my
a lot
pleasure.
of fun.
Thank you so much. And today, friends, I've been talking to Jerica-jech. She is the dating and love coach for women who find themselves suddenly single and midlife dating. If you head to lovecoachjerica.com, you can find her there, or you can head on over to www.feminineroadmap.com/episode 192. I will have show notes, and I will also have links to Jerica there. So you have a couple of ways to get a hold of her. Friends, thank you so much for being a part of the tribe here at Feminine Roadmap. And we trust that when you hear a podcast like this, that you're thinking, if it doesn't apply to you, who can you share it with? Because we are a community of women that are linking arms and helping each other live a more full, vibrant middle life, no matter what's happening in that time. So if you find yourself suddenly single and midlife dating, be encouraged. You have what it takes. You are worthy. There's a man out there that's going to think that you are amazing. So don't doubt your value. Just really get in tune with who you are, what you want to put out in the world, and allow yourself to become the beacon for the right kind of man. So thank you so much for listening to us today. Find us over on Instagram at Feminine Roadmap. Subscribe to this podcast, and we look forward to sharing more with you next week. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.